When my wife and I met, I immediately thought she was the most beautiful person I've ever seen. She was lively and vivacious, and she was completely captivating. I knew from the moment I laid eyes on her that I wanted her to be my wife. I asked her out, and she said yes. We dated for a few weeks, and I asked him to be my girlfriend. It was only a few months after that she moved into my house, and a few months after that we were married. It all happened very fast, and a lot of people in my life warned me against it. I have an incredible job, and I make 6 figures a year plus bonuses that I get every quarter. I'm not the wealthiest person on the planet, but a quick Google search will show my net worth. That made dating hard. It was always difficult to see who wanted me for me, and who wanted me for what I could do for them. When I started dating my wife, she didn't seem like she wanted anything for me. She always offered to split the bill when we went out. She got me little gifts every now and then when she could afford it. She never wanted me to buy her expensive things or take her out on fancy excursions. It seemed like she genuinely enjoyed my company. Of course, I wanted to treat her to those things. If there was ever any person that I thought deserved it, it was her. I knew that she worked hard to make the money that she had, and I wanted to take that burden away from her. When we got married, I told her to quit her job. I made more than enough to provide for both of us, and I thought she could focus on creative pursuits that she was more inclined to do. She resisted at first, but eventually she agreed that it would be good for her. I know now that her resistance and refusal of gifts were all a ploy. I was manipulated from the beginning of the relationship to think she was something that she wasn't. She wanted me for my money, but she played it differently than all the other girls. Every month on the first Saturday, she would be completely unavailable to go on any dates or come visit me. It was like that from the start of our relationship. I asked her about what she did, and she told me that was the time she dedicated to visiting her mother. Her mother passed away when she was very young. She told me that she had gone to visit her grave every month since she was 8 years old to update her mother on her life. I thought it was sweet, and I never questioned it. Who would lie about something like that? I worked a lot, so unfortunately, I wasn't always home with her. I was usually gone by the time she woke up, and I came home around 7 or 8 p.m. usually. Whenever I was home, there was nothing suspicious happening. She was a very manipulative person, so she made sure she appeared to be the perfect, loving wife that I thought she was. She went to visit her mother one day, and I went on with my day as if everything was normal. I got a call from her in the late afternoon, so I answered the phone. But it wasn't her on the other end. It was the hostess at a restaurant in Manhattan. Apparently, my wife left her phone behind, and the woman was calling to try and get it back to her. She told me that her mother's grave was in Long Island, where she was from. She hadn't mentioned anything about going to Manhattan that day, so I was a little curious. The one on the phone asked me if I was the person that was there with her. She was hoping I could tell her to go get the phone. I told her to keep it behind the counter, and I would be going to get it. I had no idea who she was with. She heard a man's voice and assumed that I was the person dining with her at the restaurant. My wife hadn't mentioned anything about going to Manhattan, and especially not going to Manhattan to see a man. I ended up taking off work early and going to the restaurant that the phone was at. I picked it up and looked through it while I took a cab home. I knew her passcode, but I had never looked through her phone before. I felt like a major invasion of privacy, but given everything that I just learned, I felt like I needed to. I looked through it, and I found a conversation with a number saved in her phone as Penny. From everything else I saw, I knew that the name was fake. There were a lot of explicit pictures being sent back and forth, and it was definitely a man she was texting. There were messages that went back for years between them. Through the context of everything, it seemed like my wife had been dating this man and fallen in love with them. Unfortunately for her, he was broke. That's why she broke up with him. She wanted a certain lifestyle, and he couldn't provide it for her. Regardless of how she felt about him, she needed to make sure she was provided for. Even though they broke up, they still saw each other once a month and slept together. It was like an agreement of sorts that they had. The man asked about me in the messages too. He asked her if I was pleasing her, and if she thought about him while she was with me. She told him that she thought about him all the time, even when she was sleeping with me. My wife asked him about a woman that we'll call Lee. He told her that Lee was nothing compared to her. It was clear that they were both cheating on their partners. They had feelings for each other, and because my wife ended the relationship, he tried to move on with someone else but couldn't. My wife lied to me and told me she was visiting the grave of her dead mother to cheat on me with this guy. It was honestly unbelievable. She wasn't at home when I arrived, so I tried to prepare myself for when she got back. I sent myself as many screenshots of their conversations as I could because I was going to need them to divorce her. She wanted my money, and I wasn't going to let her have any of it. When she got home, I could tell that she seemed exhausted. She looked disheveled, and I could tell that she was just out cheating on me. It was just something you could see on her. She was surprised to see me home, and I told her that I got a call from the woman at the restaurant, and I showed her the phone. Her face fell immediately. I had no doubt she assumed I looked through it. I asked her who she was at the restaurant with, giving her a chance to at least tell the truth before I broke the news to her. She told me that it was an old friend that she used to model for when he was painting. She said that he wanted her to be in a portrait. She threw on a fake smile while she lied to me and tried to stick with what she was saying. I guess she thought I was just that clueless. I told her that I knew everything about the guy she was seeing. I told her that I knew about Lee and how they were both having affairs, and I told her that I knew that she was only with me because of my money. She tried to tell me that none of that was true and that I was wrong about what I interpreted from the messages. There was no interpretation. It was written out in front of me, and I read it for what it was. I gave her a week to get her things out of the house, and I told her that we would be getting a divorce. When it came to the divorce, she thought that she was going to take me for half of everything I had. I remember sitting down with her and our divorce attorneys while she gave me a smug look. She thought she won. We signed a prenuptial agreement, yes. According to that, if we ended the marriage, she would be entitled to assets. Unfortunately for her, she cheated on me, so the prenuptial agreement was voided. She didn't get a dime from me. She had no money in savings and no job. I kicked her out of the house, and she was forced to go live with her father. I almost didn't want to tell Lee about their affair because I figured they would likely break up and that could give my wife somewhere to go. However, I decided it was the right thing to do. I found out who she was, and I reached out to her and explained everything, showing her some of the screenshots that I had. She was completely shocked. She reached out to me a couple of weeks after I told her everything and thanked me. She hadn't even considered her boyfriend would cheat on her, and they were getting to a very serious stage in the relationship. She was glad somebody showed her his true colors before she made that big step. I've been wary of people's intentions with me for a very long time. Unfortunately, I feel like I've been manipulated in this past relationship, and I am somewhat closed off to them now. Honestly, I would have rather dated somebody who was upfront about their motives from the beginning rather than somebody who lied to me and made me believe they were someone else. OP, it definitely seems like your wife knew what she was doing when she met you, and she created her personality to manipulate you. Unfortunately, and this isn't something you should feel bad about, it worked. You had no idea who she was before you met her, and she could make herself up to be anything she wanted. Lying about visiting your dead mother to have an affair is sick. I don't know what her situation is with that, but that's taking it a little too far. It's also just another example of how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. I think it's funny how she thought she was still going to be entitled to a large payout from you after cheating on you. I think that really shows exactly what she was there for, and it's a shame. It seems like you really cared about her and wanted to give her the best things you possibly could, and she never had her heart in it. Now for our next story. My girlfriend and I had been together for 6 years. I loved her and I wanted to be with her for the rest of my life, but apparently she had different feelings about that. Neither my girlfriend nor I went to college after high school, so we spent a lot of time trying to work to make ends meet. When we weren't working, we were spending time in town at local bars and restaurants. Our dream was to open a restaurant and bar for ourselves. We talked about it all the time, and we were hoping to get a business plan in order so we could try to get started. After a couple of years of planning and dreaming, we finally had a bit of a breakthrough in it. My uncle passed away and left me a large house. He didn't have any children or many other relatives, but he did know that I was hoping to open my own business. He hoped I could sell the house and invest the money in my bar. Some of my family members advised me against going into business with my girlfriend because we weren't married, but I didn't listen to them. I trusted her, and I thought that she and I were going to be together for the rest of our lives. I wanted to marry her, but I wanted to make sure I could give her the perfect wedding that she'd always dreamed of. That meant having the business up and running. The only thing that I did to protect myself was make sure she wasn't on as a business partner. She was listed as an employee, so God forbid anything happened, I had an out. The thing is, I didn't tell her that. She was under the impression that we were equal partners in the business, and I knew telling her otherwise would hurt her feelings. We started working on everything, and within a year, we were preparing to open for the first night. My girlfriend was in charge of hiring the staff, and I told her to give me the rundown when she was done. After she came to me with the resumes and information from the people that she hired, I looked over everything. We hired talented cooks, experienced servers, and hosts, and for the most part, the bartenders were skilled. However, there was one that didn't have any bartending experience. His name was Eric, and his only work experience was at an office supply store. I questioned her about it, wondering why she would hire them over another applicant who had experience. If she liked him and wanted to give him a job, why wouldn't she hire him as a host or server? Training somebody in either of those roles would be much easier than bartending. She didn't really have a good reason for hiring Eric. She told me that she had a gut feeling about him after they were talking about drinks. She told me that I just needed to trust her because she already hired him and they couldn't undo it. I had too much other stuff to worry about to focus on why she hired him. A couple of weeks before opening, all of the staff came in to train and sign their contracts. I met Eric for the first time when I introduced myself to him. He was a good-looking guy. With his lack of experience, part of me assumed that that was why my girlfriend hired him. I thought it was pretty annoying. When we got back to our house later that night, I mentioned it and she got angry with me for even suggesting that. We dropped it, so there wasn't an argument, and we both went to bed. Over the next couple of weeks, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I had so much to do, and there wasn't enough time to do it. I wanted our opening to be completely flawless, and it felt like my girlfriend wasn't putting in the effort that I was. Instead of helping me with all of the last-minute things that had come up, she was focusing on training Eric at the bar. At the heart of our business, we were a bar. We needed bartenders who knew what they were doing and weren't relying on a week and a half of training and a cocktail recipe book. I had to go visit a supplier one afternoon, and when I got back, my girlfriend was behind the bar with Eric, and they were laughing and standing very close to each other. It almost looked like Eric was groping her when I walked in. I asked what was so funny, and when I approached, I could tell that they were a little bit drunk. I had a realization then that my girlfriend didn't have as much stake in the business as I did, so she didn't care as much. I had a conversation with her later that night, and I told her that I needed her to step up with work. She tried to tell me that she was working hard training Eric, and then I brought up how uncomfortable I was with their relationship. It looked like it was crossing some lines, and I told her that I didn't like it. I already felt like she hired Eric because he was good-looking, and seeing them so close together bothered me. She told me that I was controlling when I said that. I was kind of flabbergasted that she would accuse me of that when any sane person seeing the way they acted together would feel the same. If the shoe was on the other foot, and I was acting like that with one of the cute servers she hired, she wouldn't let me hear the end of it. I didn't want to focus on arguing with her so close to the opening because it would only distract me. Opening night came, and for the most part, it was a huge success. We advertised the business and a bunch of people came in, and it seemed like they enjoyed themselves. The only issue that we had was Eric being horrible at his job. Over the next several weeks, the business was doing very well, and I thought that if it kept up the way that it was, we would be seeing profits in no time. With everyone busy at work, my girlfriend and Eric seemed to be spending less time with each other. I was glad to see that. I was in my office one Friday afternoon, and one of the cooks knocked on the door and closed it behind him. I'd assumed that he was about to quit. Instead, he told me about a rumor that had been going around about my wife and Eric sleeping with each other. I could tell he was nervous about bringing that information to me because his job might have been on the line. but he felt like it was the right thing to do, so he did, which I appreciated. I figured that the rumor might have just been people looking at their relationship and thinking the same things I did, but something told me that maybe there was something more to it. I hadn't seen them together often since the restaurant opened, but that didn't mean they weren't hiding something. I didn't confront my girlfriend about it right away. Instead, I pretended like I didn't know anything about the rumor and I watched her. Now that I wasn't busy with the opening of the restaurant, I had time to pay attention to things like that. Over the week that I started watching her, I noticed that she was absent quite a bit. There would be periods of time when I would be home and she wouldn't be there. She would show up at the bar about an hour after I expected her. On top of that, she and Eric didn't talk to each other at work. However, I did see them glancing over at each other often. All of that together was enough to make me think that something was going on. We had a no phone policy on the floor, and I knew that my girlfriend usually left her phone in her bag while she was working at the bar. So, I went into her locker one evening while she was supervising the front of the house. It didn't take me long to find the evidence that I needed to prove that she was having an affair with Eric. I found videos of the two of them together and countless text messages. It seemed like their affair started while she was training him at the bar. From what I could gather, they had sex in the bar. Because she was my girlfriend, but also technically my employee, I was in a sticky situation. I wanted to break up with her, and I wanted to fire her. Eric was as good as done at the business too. But I couldn't behave in any way that would risk me getting in trouble, not with the business so new. From what I saw on the phone, it looked like they were fooling around on the property from time to time. I figured the only thing I could do was catch them in the act, and I could fire them both then. We had security cameras at the bar, so I started monitoring them regularly. The first instance I saw of them together, I recorded it on the cameras. They both went into the walk-in freezer, and my girlfriend performed oral sex on Eric. That was sufficient evidence for me to fire them. I called them into my office the next day, and I showed them the video. They were completely silent while they watched it. When it was done, I told them both that they were fired. Eric nodded his head and apologized for sleeping with my girlfriend and left the office. My girlfriend lingered behind and told me that I wasn't able to fire her because of her position in the business. I pointed out the truth. I had been advised against working with her as a business partner by my family, and I took that advice. She was an employee of mine, and I was firing her. She had no monetary investment in the business, and she was paid bi-weekly just like every other employee. I also pointed out that if she paid any attention to the business at any point while I was building it from the ground up, she might have noticed that. She told me she was going to have a lawyer evaluate everything, but I didn't care. I just wanted her out of my business. After they were both fired, I thanked the cook who told me about their relationship and informed everybody else about the change and management. They asked me about what happened, and I didn't hold back the truth. I told them about finding the footage of my girlfriend and Eric in the walk-in. My girlfriend never ended up getting a lawyer. She probably couldn't afford to get one if she wanted to. After I fired her, she had to practically beg for her old job back, and now she's working paycheck to paycheck again. Eric wasn't really interested in her aside from her being a quick hookup every now and then. Eric had the audacity to put my name on his resume to give him a reference for another job. They called me, and I told them the truth about everything, advising them not to hire him. I always thought he was kind of an idiot, but that was just too much. I'm focusing my attention on the business now. It's been doing very well, and there is the demand in my town to open up other places, so I'm trying to look toward the future. OP, your girlfriend threw around the term controlling because she knew it would make you back down. Nobody wants to be told that they are a controlling partner. Honestly, she manipulated you. The fact that they were so blatant with their relationship, that there was a rumor going around your employees, shows a complete lack of care from both of them. It didn't seem like your girlfriend cared much if you found out about the fling. She thought she was grandfathered into a cushy position. She was selfish, and she wanted to hook up with Eric. That was all there was to it. I think it is funny that Eric didn't really want anything to do with her after the fact. She threw away a relationship with a good person and a stable job for something that was just a temporary excitement. She dreamed of opening her own bar with you, and she had that opportunity. She threw it away, and she got upset about it when it didn't work out. On top of that, it really sounds like she wasn't putting any work in. Your family did you a service by advising you to cover yourself with her. Had you not, things could have been a lot stickier than they were. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.